Hey. Thank you. Wow, someone said the lights are really bright here, and they were right. So it's nice so I don't see if the room is half full. I'm a glass half full person. So as was mentioned, I am Sandra Särav, the Deputy Secretary General for Business and Consumer Environment in the Estonian Ministry of Economic Affairs and Communications. That's a long title. Trust me, it took some time to learn this. I've been currently in this role for 1.5 months now. I worked in the Estonian government before. I just did a quick detour to private sector. I worked at Bolt, which was a super fun experience. I'm sure you all know what Bolt is. And I would never exchange this experience for anything else. From Bolt, I briefly went to Facebook, and I learned that I really want to do something innovative, change people's lives, not work somewhere what is bureaucratic and super slow and hierarchical. So I left Facebook, and I rejoined the Estonian government. So I'm back here, and let me talk a bit about data monetization. So why do we need to share data in healthcare or generally? Why do we need to reuse and reshare data? So today we have talked a lot about mental health, how people break down, or how services are not personalized to us. When I used to work at Bolt, then during one of our summer summits, one of our colleagues said during the summer summit that he really had a mental breakdown, he really had a burnout. So what happened was he was in bed for over 4 months and he just couldn't recover. And he didn't see this coming. And by the way, he had had a burnout before. But still, he couldn't see this coming, and neither could his doctor. So now, when we talk about personalized services, the fact is, most services are generic, universal, and we really don't have this tailor-made approach yet. But can you imagine that instead of the trial and test approach by your doctor could use your specific data, such as your medical imaging, compared with actual social behavior or your lifestyle data that they could get from any types of connected devices that you use. This is not the case yet, though, but this could be the case. Why? Because if we're going to have a specifically diagnosed case for you, if your doctor could prevent your mental breakdown or your burnout, this could change the way we act, we work, we live all together. So is it possible actually to reuse and share data, and who's responsible for this? Well, in Estonia, we think that yes, reuse and sharing data is actually possible. Did you know, and we had a femtech person talking here before, did you know that women are 50% more likely to be misdiagnosed after having a heart attack? Why is that? Lack of personalized services. So in Estonia, you may or may not know, we have over 99% of services available digitally. Well, there's a bunch of you Estonians who probably know that, but still, I think it's quite an impressive number. This also means that your medical records are fully digitalized. This means you can access your medical records, but not only. All of the medical professionals can access your medical records. So I collapse here on the stage, someone calls me an emergency service. While I'm rushed to the emergency room, they can check my allergies, they can check my previous medical records, if I have had any operations. So what's my blood type, so they wouldn't infuse me with the wrong blood. Everything is out there. But the thing is, we believe that people hold the power over their own data. Meaning, I can actually switch off this view to any of the medical professionals. But people don't do this in Estonia. Only like 0.001% of Estonians have switched off this view. And why? Because it's useful. If the medical professionals can see this data, they can diagnose you better. Now imagine if we had services that would combine the private sector data and public sector data, and you get a really personalized approach. Unfortunately, no. So even if in Estonia, all of our services are fully digitalized, all of our medical records are fully digitalized, that's not the case, definitely not the case cross-border. Even if Estonia and Finland, who were the first countries to pilot cross-border digital services, and even though the Finns can come to Estonia and with their ID card check their prescriptions out of the pharmacy, there is no cross-border effective health data sharing. This is a priority at the EU level, but it doesn't happen effectively yet. So I recently moved to Poland when I went to work at Facebook, and I had to go to a dentist. And guess what? I had to do a new X-ray photo of my dental situation. And I had to pay 50 freaking euros. even though I had taken this photo just 1 year ago in Estonia, because these things are not being shared cross-border. And why is that so? There are issues of data quality, data standardization, regulations. Data lock-in happens all the time. And who loses from this? It's us. So do know that all of the companies and even governments actually fight for your data. Data is the biggest value that you can have. For data thieves in the US, a social security number is worth 53 American cents. 53 cents. Your entire medical record, $250. Your Facebook profile, 153 US dollars. So your medical records are much more worth than even your Facebook account, which is used for something that is personalized, and that's ads. So everyone's competing for your data, but to whom the value of your data is the biggest? It's you. Wrong medical diagnosis, potentially the price of your life. So there are still some bloomer countries who are doing a bunch of things, and I'm going to briefly mention about them, starting with Denmark. Already back in 2018, Denmark published a paper which is called Denmark, a telehealth nation. They had been looking into telehealth already from 2012, meaning that you can provide some medical services to people from a distance. And guess what? It really, really proved to be useful during the times of COVID. Meant that if people had some injuries and they were at home and then needed to do some care, let's say your knee movements needed to be improved for your full recovery, then actually it could be checked over telehealth whether you are doing these in the right way, are you on the correct path to recovery. In Sweden, similar thing. So elderly people, especially during the times of COVID, but actually all the time, are home alone. So based on your activity, whether you switch on and off your TV often enough, they can actually send alerts that, okay, this person is home alone, they haven't switched on their TV for a long time, maybe we should send someone to check over them. Another cool example from Estonia. So already back in 2000, Estonia was such a protagonist of all the new ideas that we passed a bill which was about collecting genome data. Fast forward 18 years, when Estonia turned 100, then we asked only one gift from the people of Estonia. Please donate a blood sample for your country. So only in 2018, more than 100,000 people donated their blood sample to the Biobank of Estonia. And if you think it's not a big number, then actually it's nearly 10% of our population. And this is the future of predictive medicine in Estonia. So not all examples are that great. In the Netherlands, which is a great country, some time ago they had a problem, not specifically in healthcare, but in social care. You may or may not have heard about this, but they used algorithms to detect tax fraud in social cases. So the algorithm was a bit of biased, more specifically towards ethnic minorities and people with lower incomes. So tens of thousands of people suddenly receive a bill, hundreds of thousands of euros worth, that you committed tax fraud and we're going to ask you to pay this money back, decided by an algorithm. People went into bankruptcy, thousands of children were sent into foster care, people even committed suicide. Because an algorithm decided you are probably likely to commit tax fraud. So nothing is perfect, no one is perfect, but we're definitely moving towards this. Oh, and I cannot pronounce this, I just put this up there for fun. Torslagenafer, whatever. What about private sector? So I use Fitbit. It's probably tracking my steps now as I'm just walking up and down the stage. I've been using this Fitbit for years and years and years. I track my sleep. I normally have problems with deep sleep. So every morning I wake up and it's like, oh, again, it was 11% of my sleep. Last night it was 19, but it's because my partner is away, so I could sleep alone. I have the entire bed to myself. So anyway, I wake up, I check the deep sleep, and then I probably Google, oh, how to increase deep sleep. And probably it's going to say something like, take a walk before you go to sleep, which I do anyway because I have a dog, so it's not helpful. So Google is not helpful, Fitbit is not helpful because they show me some type of data, but actually I have no use of this data because they're not telling me what am I doing wrong. And by the way, recently Google acquired Fitbit, so actually they probably even have a better picture of me than I have, but it's still not helpful to me. And there's a bunch of cool stuff done by Apple. So they've taken a step forward. If with Fitbit, I only see this data in my app or on my watch, then Apple actually lets you set up health alerts, and you can alert someone if you are having out of abnormal activities with your health, such as heartbeat, or you don't have any steps anymore, and so forth. And they're also piloting in the US to share this with healthcare service providers, and I quote, to offer a better and more well-informed discussions with your doctor. Not better healthcare, not better services, but better discussions with your healthcare provider. And of course, there's a bunch of stuff being done with the use of VR. So I mentioned Denmark and knee exercise practices before. Many of the things when you're recovering, you cannot do without the help of another human being. So actually, VR comes into place here. It feels like another human being is guiding you and telling you how to do those exercises most precisely. And of course, with Facebook being rebranded to Meta last year, and with the launch of the metaverse, it has so much potential for healthcare. So for instance, medical professionals could learn new ways of operating without actually being in the operation room. You could even receive psychological guidance from someone while being in the place where you feel the most comfortable. For instance, during the times of COVID, I did consult a psychologist, but it was online. I was at the office, so I was sitting in this phone booth, and it was super inconvenient. I didn't feel comfortable at all, but my favorite places in the world are by the sea. So if I could have transferred myself in the metaverse somewhere next to the sea and have this discussion with my psychologist, I would have felt much more relaxed, and probably it would have had a better effect on me. So the problem with all of those things, VR, metaverse, Apple, Fitbit, all of this data is locked in. It's not being shared. And you know what? Maybe we don't even want this to be shared. We all know the case of Edward Snowden and the NSA and what has happened with the data that the big tech is collecting about you. So luckily, the EU is doing some pretty cool stuff here. A lot of the things that the EU is doing is called some type of protectionism. You know, we're trying to protect our own companies and our own 445 million people living in the EU. But some of the things actually could prove to be helpful. One of the new acts is the Data Act, which actually tells that the IoT-produced data that you have helped to produce can be shared with you or can be shared with a third party of your choice. The thing, though, you, the one who has helped to generate this data, cannot monetize this. The only person or the only one entitled to monetize this data is the data holder. And even though it's data about you, you are not the data holder. The data holder is Fitbit. The data holder is Garmin or Polar or whatnot. So they can actually make money from the fact that they share data about you. Another cool act is the Digital Governance Act, which basically tries to remove the technical obstacles of sharing data and create some more trust there. In the EU, potentially, in the coming 10 years, we have 11 billion euros worth of medical data, but it's not being shared. So if we could use this in healthcare, this would generate about half of it. If we could use this for medical research, this could generate the rest of this half. And we try to make this work with the use of health data space. So actually, the EU is sitting on a gold mine, but we just don't know how to reuse and share this data. Estonia is grabbing the bull by the horns, meaning that, OK, let's try and do something before the EU is actually effectuating their regulations. And this is known as the consent service. So we're piloting with this right now, but this means if I give consent to a company, I can ask the government to send a specific set of data to this company so they can offer me a personalized service. It's not yet effective in healthcare, but we're working on the regulation, should be done by the end of the year. And then I could go to the Minister of Social Affairs, to my doctor, and say, OK, you know, Estonian, my medical records, I'm very interested in having these transferred to a company called MindMaze, who is helping people with psychological issues, and they help you give you tailor-made services. So can you please share my medical data to this company? And this will be available. And I would trust my government sharing this data to a company I have chosen, more than I could trust, I don't know, Apple or Fitbit share this data to someone I have not chosen. So it all comes down to attitude. Who do we trust? Just yesterday, I was at the North Medical Center of Estonia, and I saw patients just roaming about the hospital using these, stands that they had. They had these drips, IV drips, and just walking in and out of the hospital. And I was thinking, But how is this possible? I mean, they're patients. Shouldn't they be locked inside a hospital? But you know, we trust those people. If you're there to get medical care, you're not going to run out. I mean, some people might, but you want to finish your care. You're not going to run out of the hospital, and we trust you to go around and even have a smoke like one guy did. But yet again, we don't trust the people with their own data. We say, okay, this is your data, but we don't yet trust you sharing this with another party of your choice, which just doesn't make any sense at all. So the problem is, right, data lock-ins and the attitude. So who owns your data? I mean, this is my data. How is it possible that I don't have the right to share this data with someone else? Just recently, I had a very sad experience in my family. My grandma passed away, but she was an avid user of smartwatches. We gave her, for her birthday, a smartwatch, and she would do like 20,000 steps a day. But her health started deteriorating, which meant that she didn't do any more steps, maybe 1,000 steps per day. In the end, nothing. We couldn't get her to go to the hospital because she hated doctors. But what if she had a virtual assistant connected to her smartwatch who would be very concerned about the situation? And if my grandma didn't listen to doctors, maybe she would have listened to a virtual assistant, someone who had personal information about her, someone who was checking over her and saying, Ingrid, something is wrong. Do you want to talk about this? Maybe I can guide you. Maybe I can give you a doctor's appointment. Some things would have definitely gone differently, but we're not there yet. So for our family's sakes, for our personal sakes, I really hope the situation is going to change. We see it happening at the EU level. I just don't understand currently. I mean, we talk about data monetization. We have all this data about ourselves, but we're not actually able to monetize this. So what is it? Oligarchy? Monarchy? Democracy? I don't know. Thank you so much.
Sandra, thank you for an amazing presentation. And we have 2 questions for you. Are you ready? So the first one, more personal. Working in Bolt versus Meta versus in the ministry, how is it different?
So Bolt and Estonian government are very similar. At Bolt we said we're a very frugal company. Estonian government is very frugal. It's thin-layered, it's not hierarchical, you can make things move fast if you need to. We've passed some amazing legislation, such as about sTARTUp, within a question of months. So they're quite similar, only at Bolt they pay you more money. Facebook, I mentioned, hierarchical, bureaucratic, so not my cup of tea. If I would retire and I just needed to make some money, maybe I could go back there.
Okay. So more questions are coming in, but let's go in order.
Personal?
Let me see. No. So what's your view on Web3? Distributed data systems, people owning their private keys, their own data, basically. Trustless architecture. Does this all mean that one day these Estonia-specific experiences like X-Road can go global, or maybe European first and then global?
I think X-Road will be outdated by the time. I mean, we built this in, 2011? Or even earlier, 2001, sorry. So it's an old system. But Web3, I think it will make things happen. Exactly, it's distributed, it's personalized, user-based services. And I mean, in healthcare, I'm not a healthcare expert, but I'm the Business Environment Deputy Secretary General. I think we're going to need new forms of entrepreneurship because of Web3. I mean, you might go and work somewhere, do something on the side, but you will have a side business. I mean, look at all the influencers right now. But you might do your music or your art or whatnot, and Web3 will allow this singlepreneurship or mono-entrepreneurship. And I'm definitely looking forward to seeing how this goes. Yeah.
Awesome. We have time for one more. What is the Estonian government doing to ensure the healthcare data is current and available in consistent formats, so it is usable by digital health apps, given the consent, of course?
So the consent service, which I mentioned, if this is going to take place, then we can share with private sector service providers. Currently, you have the service the data available on the digital patient portal, I think it's called. So you can go, you can check your data, you can download this in some forms, and you can share this, up to you. But just the consent service would make life so much easier, because you just tell the government, okay, this data, share about me there. And you can always take back this consent. So this would make life seamless and more easier.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. Please, applause.